Hey everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. I'm going to show you a couple of programs being able to chart somewhat live charts of pricing, both using Bollinger and moving average from Matlab. What I'm about to show you is a lot of reasons why I'm using Matlab to do my charting instead of relying on the other third-party charting packages. The big reason is that when you want to develop one of your own charts, you're looking at about 300 to 400 lines. I'm going to show you my code on top of the Matlab code and how to bring it all together. But first, let me show you what we got running in the background. First, hopefully you know about my QCollector. That's where I get my information from through IQFeed. I am going to track this SPX XO, or the SPY. It's basically SPX. And what we're going to do is step through it, downloading the latest file. I've shown this numerous times where it's going to update a file. In the file that it's going to update, this is all using QCollector, is this file right here, spx_1 txt, and that file is a period of 1 minute. Now I could change this to tick, but I get conflicts just due to my C# program and QCollector conflicting with each other, so I'm just doing this for demo purposes. If you're going to do this on a tick level, you better bet to stream your data into your C#, but I'll show that in a minute. But for now, I'm just doing it step by step for debugging. Okay, so that's the first program that we have running in the background is QCollector to collect the latest data from SPX. All right, so we have basically our C# here in Visual Studio. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to do first. I'm going to run the C# program in debug mode. Now, this is it here. It's already running. And also, there's two programs actually. There's this one and the actual chart from within Matlab, which is this guy right here. Now, I'm going to show you it kind of running. This is after market, so the market's not open. But I just want to show you that the info does get updated. If you will notice at the end here where blue is the asset price, which of course is our SPX. And right now I'm running moving average, so we have a leading and a lagging indicator. I'll show that in the MATLAB code as well. So let me run my QCollector. I'm going to do this off. Actually, let me do it this way. Just keep your eyes on this chart here, but I'm going to do a collect selected let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to just run it. So I'll do a collect selected. You can see that the chart has somewhat moved between the last price of 1994, 1924, 19. Well, actually, for the last 5 steps, it has not changed. So let me just do one more step here, see if it does anything on the actual chart. Yeah, it's moving it. As you can see here, if you see the red and the yellow, it does move. Now, one of the other things that is cool about using Matlab is you can blow stuff up. So if you, again, watch the red and the blue, and I believe that's like an orange, I guess, you'll see it move and update. But again, it refreshes fairly quickly, and it does update. Okay, so big whoop whoop. But some of the powerful things you can do with the Matlab charting, which is not bad at all, is you can, move things around like this. If you wanted, it was a surface plot, you could kind of do that and keep it running in real time if you wanted. But of course, it's a. Let me see here. How can I get this back? Actually, this is probably the best way. There you go. So that gets updated as it should. And yeah, so let me take you through the code, and then we'll switch it up to a Bollinger, because again, this is a moving average, okay? But it does seem to work somewhat. All right, so let me pull up a typical other example of from another library, and just showing you why I don't really like using these charting packages anymore that are specifically in .NET. It's a pain in the ass to work with a lot, even though a lot of these companies have been pretty generous to me. And here, let me just pull up one of my project files. Let's see. How do I find this? Okay. Here's my lightning chart. Down here, lightning. Okay. So here's a typical example of one of the examples you get with lightning charts. I'm just going to pull up this in my my Visual Studio. Let me just pull it up. I'm going to show you the difference between the line sizes and versus my code and in the Matlab. It's like literally 1/10 of the size. As this loads up, blah 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 blah. Okay, so if I load in my can't remember half the time. It's really confusing. Okay, that'd be nice if you could load up. Okay. Oh boy, this is bad. Shouldn't take this long. Okay, well, I guess let me just show you my code. Okay, so I'll show you first the Matlab code. Okay, so what I've got here, I'll be providing all this code here on the Matlab side. I've got two functions that we're going to focus on. We have a Bollinger, and then we have a moving average. The moving average, which I just showed you, basically takes a closing price array that's sent to from C#, runs basically the array on these parameters of 3 and 20, and the price, we just label it on the Y, label it like that with a long and short. So price, and then we've got the legend here of long, short, all that. Yeah, here it gets kind of confusing. All right, so yeah, so that's what we do with the legend. We just define it, and then the trick for this to work, I'm sure there's a better, more efficient way. I just return something back for C#, because that's what it expects. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this. But essentially, that's how I just basically plot a moving average chart. Now the Bollinger is not so much any more complicated. You just have a closing price array. You have basically a symbol title, which is basically a string, and we just run it with these parameters. Again, we have an axis, so I'll show this in a minute. We give a label and a title, and same idea where it returns the close, just for demo purposes. I'm sure, as I keep saying, there's probably a better way of doing it. Let's go back into our Visual Studio. Now, one of the key highlights here is you're dealing with essentially, let's see, maybe 10, 12 lines, 10 lines of code. Oh, before I forget, this CLF is important because that keeps the focus of the previous figure, and I do the same thing here as well. So this CLF keeps the focus in check every time I call this function, instead of creating a new figure. So let me show you the code. Okay, there is the C# code. Now, hopefully my lightning chart code is loaded. Yes, it has. Now, this is to load up just a basic price chart in C#. You've got nearly 300 lines of code. Now, if you looked at my code, all you're really doing to call that Matlab function is really maybe no more than 10 lines. This is one of the big reasons why I'm now using Matlab. I'm throwing out the complexity of these kind of charts. Not saying I'm never going to do it. It's much easier, and you can see some of the charting that you could get with Matlab itself, with all these little extra features like what they do, I guess, but it helps. So that's a big reason why I use the Matlab for the heavy lifting on my charting. I'm not trying to be a Renaissance person when it comes to art and plotting pretty charts. I could do it, but in this case, I'm just keeping it real for now, simple. All right, so let me walk you through the other end of the code. Okay, so this is the Matlab code functions. Now, what you need to realize is that you can package this code up into a .NET assembly, which is basically a DLL, or dynamic link library. And this is what it looks like once you finish it up. So we'll say successful, I guess, as a package. I'll show you what this package file looks like in a minute. So let me just close this and just show you more about this process. This is a Matlab compiler for library, really compiler. It's part of the SDK. They've renamed it from formerly the Builder NE. So essentially, to launch this from within Matlab, you just come under your apps. There is, what you could do is essentially just look for a library compiler. So that's what we're talking about right here. And that will package up your .NET assembly. Now you can see here, which is very powerful, I can package up a Java package, which is really a jar file, COM component, an Excel add-in, C++ shared library, or C shared library. And these would be good if you're running within Linux. You package it up for Linux as well, C or C++, as well as a Java. So this will work on pretty well any platform on this methodology. Obviously, you have to include your Bollinger and your moving average functions, which I just showed you here, here, and here. And all you got to do after that is just click package, and it will run and package everything up as I showed you. And it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, depends on your processor, obviously. It takes a bit of time. It includes the MCR, which is the Matlab compiler runtime, which is headless. So that enables me to distribute these packages royalty-free. And that includes for my members as well, who may not have Matlab, but they could still use this without the need of Matlab. So that's kind of cool. So this is what you get packaged up. This is what how everything looks once your process from the Matlab side gets packaged into a DLL. Really, all you really care about is this thing called ML charts DLL. Okay, and basically, if you scroll to the bottom here, you need to define your class name, which is ML charts DLL, and then I've defined my class name to be ML charts as well, and these two are just really used for other C++, I'd imagine, but we're really concerned about the ML charts DLL. So that's pretty well that on generating this DLL. So once you complete that, you can now have access to it in your project. There's 2 projects that you need to include in a Visual Studio C# project. you need to include your ML charts.dll I just created, the MW array DLL as well, and that is used to define these imports that you're going to use. So you need to include both the arrays and utility. So basically in your code, what you're essentially doing to generate the chart, or just to call any package up DLL within Matlab, it's not, it looks complicated, but it's not. I've shown this numerous times, but all you're really doing is once you define and added the DLL to the reference here, just come under add existing, and browse to the proper DLL. Now there's some tricks to this as well. You'll notice here my mode that I'm running is 64-bit. I only use 64-bit because I believe this DLL gets created as a 64-bit. If you try to compile under any CPU configuration or a 32-bit configuration, it won't work. It's not compatible. So I just keep everything pretty simple in 64-bit. Alright, so let me show you how you define this. Basically what you do is you've added it to your reference section in your project, and because I've called it ML charts, I can now see it, right? So that's part of my contextual, I can't remember the name of it, as if I'm some .NET expert. Anyway, so where is my ML array? So here is how I define it, like this. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. MLC is the name of the object that I give it. So when you're about to call it, there's a couple of tricks here to pass, let's say, arrays, double arrays especially, into the function of Matlab. So my MLC object here, so if I go under MLC, I can see my my Bollinger and my moving average Matlab functions. Okay, and you can see it will tell you what it's expecting as well. You can see here what it's expecting is basically the arguments out. How many are you passing back? In my case, it defaults to 1. I could probably put 0 here. I don't know. I'm not going to get too finicky with it. I'm just trying to give you a high level how this works. So we have args out, a number of arguments, and that is specifically defined as in, let's say in the moving average. Here I've got my array that I pass into it, and also how many parameters I have on the out. So in my case, if I had x minus y, that's obviously 2 parameters that are going to get returned from the function. So what that basically means is here under the how do I do this? Yeah, you'll see here you have moving average, number out, and which is where I have that before. Oh no. So if I, right here, this is what I was doing. Moving average. See here, it's saying number of arguments out, so I'd set that to 2 if I had 2 parameters that were going to be returned, and the actual parameters on the in. And then you pass whatever your arguments are. So in this case, I only have 1 argument, and that's the double array that I'm going to pass into it, which is my array of my prices. Actually, in this one for the moving average. So I'll show you this Bollinger in a minute, but because I have the Bollinger function, you can see here it has 2 parameters, the closing and the name of the symbol or the string representation of the symbol, which could be, in my case, SPX, right? So here, that's what I'm passing, is I'm passing my array, and I'm also passing the name of the symbol, which is SPY, it's a string, obviously. So that's the difference between one or two parameters, or however. This is the tricky part, but once you understand it, it's really easy. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the actual call right here to call your Matlab function. This line you need, and your declaration to instantiate, which is, where's my instantiation? Right here. So there's really 3 lines. It's all you need to call a Matlab function. So technically, I'm only needing 3 lines to make a call and generate a chart. Now, I'm going to walk you through the C# side. Now, this is no different than the Karen Super Trader strategy that I've used to basically watch a file. So if I launch this and I load up and change my QCollector, just do one more here. There you go. So you see it's watching that file here, SPX_1 and TXT. Okay. Let me just tear this down. Okay. Just stop at the bugger here. Okay, so how do we get to this point? As I said, that's what we're doing, is we're watching that file. I don't want to go too much into detail over it because this will be my 3rd time in the last week. But do watch that Super Karen Trader strategy, because I go into much detail. So essentially, we're just running this run method. We set up a watcher on that file. We hard code it. Where is it? All the files, actually, all TXT files. But when it sees something that gets changed, all the TXT files, then it'll launch this method. Okay. So it'll launch the onChanged. It will do some manipulation. Now, this is where all the action takes place, which I just showed you. Then we instantiate our Matlab charts class. We send a little message that we're changing the file, or it saw a change. Here we do some manipulation of the file name, parse it with the underscore. Grab the first representation of that F name. If it's SPX, which it is, then we go in and retrieve the latest price, which is going to basically read the latest price. I can show you that for a quick second. And all it's going to do is just going to read the last line, as you can see here. Add it. It's actually going to parse out the data the second parameter, which is 0 base, don't forget, it's really the 3rd base, is the closing price. Let me just verify that to show you. So yeah, date, time, close. Or sorry, it's using open, I guess, but I could just shift it over to the close if I want. So it's grabbing that element, writes it out, returns the price. Okay, and that's all that. Retrieve last price, or latest price. So coming back in here, where am I? Oh yeah, right here. That's where we left off. As I said, we could do that concurrent queue if you want to track that. Then it will convert that to a list of doubles. But we need to do one more little trick here for Matlab. We got to take the prices and convert it to a double array, because this is a list double. So we got to create a double array, okay, and then we can pass this double array into our function moving average. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing in a nutshell. Okay, so we've gone through the code, we've gone through the Matlab. Now all I'm going to really do is we've run the moving average, so I'm going to comment that out and do the Bollinger. Now I could probably run some other charting functions. Usually there's Bollinger, there's a candlestick, and the other financial one I think is moving average. That's all you really have coming out of Matlab. So let me just launch this. So we set the Bollinger function to get called. Go back into our QCollector. So let me just do one more change here. It's always on the second one. There we go. So you can see this is now the Bollinger, the little title, the pricing, title. We can fix this up, but call me lazy. But this is the price of the current price. So if I, let's see here, where's my, go to the next step. Collect selected item, do it again. But if it's live market, what will happen is this will get updated however frequently I want. But again, I have mentioned this before, this file will conflict with your C# program, so you need to be aware of that. So you need to have some kind of exception handling for a try catch or some kind of exception handling. So this is just for demonstration purposes, but if you're trading on the tick, what I would recommend is you stream data into your prices list. When I say prices list, I am talking about this guy right here. If you stream it from IQFeed directly, you can do that using any of the developer API examples. You can even do it in Java if you want, or have one of the C# or C++ programs samples that they use to be able to stream that. You could use Redis for more fault tolerance. You could use, in my membership, Quant Elite membership, I show how to do it in 0MQ. So there's numerous options, but in this case I'm just doing it via a flat file, a CSV file, comma separated file generated by QCollector, which is again this guy right here. So there's numerous ways to do that. You could even do it within a database, but you know, if you want to do ticks, that is. But if you're doing it by minute, 5 minutes, it's not a big deal. So there you go. We do have the charting kind of working, and nothing fancy, but you can see the code is a lot smaller than if I'm using a standard charting. I would say maybe 4 or 5 lines for the actual charting itself versus, and again, I showed the Matlab side as well, and you're really dealing with not even 10 lines. But again, when you look at something like a lightning chart or any other type of commercial charting package, you're looking at, God, hundreds and hundreds of lines. That's just the code itself, and then you got to deal with the XAML if you're doing the WPF. But this way, it's so much easier to deal with. Nothing fancy. I don't care about pretty charts. Not again, and not at this point. Not saying that these charting packages are useless. They're not. But there are going to be people out there that might not be able to afford the thousands of dollars to be able to generate code like this or work with them. But as it stands right now, that's what we're looking at for simple charting with Matlab and really condensing the code. Hopefully this will help you out, and I'll talk to you later. Oh, and the code is always available for my quantity members. Talk to you later.